Hey, it's Jeff with DaringDino.com. In this video, you will learn how to animate a cube array in Blender. I'll cover how to use empty objects to control arrays, and how to animate this abstract animation really easily. So first, let's look at what we'll be making. The cool thing about this project is you only need 3 things in the scene and you don't need to know how to model. So to start things off, let's make sure our 3D cursor is at the world origin. You can press N on your keyboard or expand out this little guy here and go to View, 3D Cursor, and just make sure it's at 0, 0, 0. And I'll press N to hide that. So I'll press Shift A to add our mesh, which is a cube. And that added that. And then I'll also press Shift A to add an empty plane axis, and then I'll just press Enter to set that in place. And then Shift D, and then Enter again to put that one in place. And now we've got all of our objects that we need. We'll also add a camera with Shift A and then camera, and then I'll just go into top view by pressing 7 on my number pad key, and I'm just gonna press G to move my camera, and I'll just move it back over here. I'll go into front view and I'll just move it up a little, and then I'll press 0 on my number pad key, and I can press Shift and the tilde key. It's the key right by the 1 key. And tab, and then I'm just going to move my mouse to set my camera in place, and then I'm also going to move the camera back quite a bit with G and then Z, Z, so I pressed Z twice, and then I'm just going to drag down on my mouse, or move my mouse down until I get a little further away, and that should be good. And now we'll set up our array to make duplications of this cube. So I'll go into my modifier properties here and add a modifier to the cube, and just say array modifier, and I'm going to turn off relative offset and turn on object offset. And for the first array, I'm going to use the first empty, and I'm going to turn this count up to 7. You can make this whatever you want, but I found that 7 was a good in-between number. And then I'm going to copy this array, and I'm going to change the second offset to empty 01. So now if I grab this empty object and I move it around, I'm moving the duplication of this cube around too. So we're going to animate these empty objects, position, rotation, and scale, or location, rotation, scale, or Lockrot scale. And I'll show you how to do that. So first, I will select my first empty over here and press I, and then I'm going to insert a keyframe, the location, rotation, and scale. And I'm at the very beginning of my project. And I'm going to do the same thing for my other empty here. And while I'm at it, I'm going to set one for the camera as well. Except I just need to worry about the location for that one. Okay, so let's select our first empty, and let's go to frame 20, and I'm just going to press GX just to move it out. So I'm going to make all my duplicates visible here. And then I'll press I to insert a keyframe here. And if you want to avoid inserting keyframes every time you move something, you can just turn this little auto key on, and anytime you move something, it will automatically add a keyframe for what you have set up. So that's super handy, so I'll turn that on. And then I'll select this other empty, and I'm just going to manually insert a keyframe with I and Lockrot scale. That way, if I play my animation back, just that one moves. And then when I go forward a little bit, I'll say frame 40, I'm going to grab my second keyframe, or my second empty here, press GZ, and I'm going to move it up to start making a bunch more duplicates of my cube. And we don't really need to see through the camera right now, so and you can see it automatically added a keyframe. So now we can see that the animation looks like that, which is exactly what we want. So now we've moved the location around. Let's see what happens if I rotate one of these empties. So I'm going to rotate it like on the Z-axis, or I could grab this other one and rotate it on the X-axis, or I could rotate that one on the Z-axis and make these curve around. But I thought that was cool when I made the rest of them kind of offset like that. So I'll just go something like that. And now if I play back my animation, you can see it kind of move into place. And since I added a keyframe here, I'm just gonna select my other empty, and these values are green, which means there's no keyframe right here. And I'm just gonna insert a keyframe manually there myself. And anytime you see this orange bar here, it just means that there's no change in these values. It's just kind of a hold keyframe. And I'll go ahead and save my file really quick. So I'm just gonna keep moving forward and doing different things. So maybe let's scale this one down. That looks kind of cool. And then I'll just insert a keyframe here. And then I'll move forward some more, and maybe I'll press R twice to rotate this like on an arbitrary axis. Something like that looks kind of cool. And then I'll just do the same thing, add a keyframe here. And then I'll go forward some more. Maybe I'll move this one randomly with G. And then I'll grab this one and rotate it a little. Let's see which direction looks cool. That looks kind of cool. So let's see what I have so far. So it comes out, turns around, scales down, moves around some more, kind of flips around. And then I'll do one more thing. Let's try spinning it a whole bunch or something. I don't know. And then maybe I'll grab this one and scale it up a little. Maybe I'll scale this one down. That looks kind of interesting. And then for my last keyframe, I want everything to fly back together back into one cube. So I'm just going to select this first keyframe over here, and you can see it's selected because it's yellow and all the other ones are now empty. And I'm just going to press Command C or Control C. And I'm just going to go to the end of my timeline here, maybe back a little bit. I'll go to frame 240 and just press Command V or Control V to paste that in. And I'll do the same thing for my other empty over here. So I'll just select just this one, copy it, and paste it. And then everything at the end will kind of fly back together. So now let's see what our animation looks like. Kind of turns around, flies over, and flies back together. And then it repeats. So now all we need to do is animate our camera. So I'll just go into camera view, and I'll zoom in so that it's a little bit easier to tell where the camera is pointed. So at the beginning, everything looks fine, but already it's a little bit behind. So I'm just going to press G, Z, Z again and move backwards a little. And since I have that auto keyframe on still, it will keep that. So I'm just gonna move, oops, I'm gonna undo that. I'm just gonna select this first keyframe and move it over a little so that the animation doesn't move right away. And maybe I'll move this one over a little. And I wanna see this cool turn that's happening, so I'm going to press Shift and the tilde key again, and that goes into fly mode. And I'm just gonna move up and move back again with G, Z, Z. And it might be cool to move to the left, but we'll see where we go here. So I'm going to, over here, I'm going to start moving to the left. So I'm just going to go into top view and zoom out. I'll just make my camera a little bit bigger. I don't think that changes. No, that doesn't change anything. And I'm just going to move over here, and then I'm going to rotate it back towards where we were looking, and I'm just going to press RZ just to rotate the view back into the center, and maybe I'll move down just a little too, just to make things interesting. And then I'll rotate on the x-axis of the camera with RXX. Cool. So let's save again, go back to the beginning, kind of play what we've got here. So, and you can see the camera's a little bit behind the action, and I find that that actually makes it more natural because you can't predict what's going to happen ahead of time with a real camera. So I think that looks pretty cool. And then maybe what I'll do is I'll just move the camera over here some more, and then I'll just rotate it. Yeah, get a little bit closer like that. That looks kind of cool. And then let's see what happens next. So it kind of moves. I think we need to move again. So let's maybe move like this way. Go back to camera view. Oops, I don't want to rotate it that way. Let's rotate it on its Z-axis and just shift tilde key to kind of move down. Cool. And then at the end, let's see. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is grab this first keyframe, copy it, and go to frame maybe 245 and paste that in. So now I need to figure out like where my camera needs to go in between here. So let's look and see where it's going. So it's going that way, but for some reason it's pointing in the wrong direction, which probably means that I didn't grab the rotation keyframe at the beginning. Nope, I sure didn't. So let's just insert a keyframe. So I'm on the keyframe right now. You can tell because part of these are yellow. And I'll just insert a location and rotation keyframe. And then if I copy that one, go to this frame, which is 245, and I'm just gonna delete that with X and delete the keyframes here and paste them again. Now you can see it's pointing in the right direction. And I just wanted to make sure it's like exactly the same spot so that when we loop back, it will be in exactly the same position as it was before. So you can see right here, we almost have the loop, but it looks kind of boring. It just kind of like slides over. So maybe we'll press Shift tilde and move up, and then GZZ and just move back a little bit so that we can see what's going on. And I'm just going to reposition the camera again, something like that. The cool thing about this is like you can do it differently every time and get something slightly different. So that looks pretty cool. So let's just play back our animation. So it's moving, got cool camera move. It's interesting the whole time. And the reason I added a little bit of space at the beginning and the end is because you don't want it to be too jerky when it starts and stops. So I think that looks cool. So let's select our cube and go into shading. And I'm gonna make a new material for this. And I want the roughness to be nothing. I don't want it to be too rough. And I'm just gonna turn on the preview over here. I'm gonna change the base color to be like a green. I'm gonna turn up the transmission value all the way, which that just makes it kind of like transparent. And I think that looks pretty cool. Awesome. So since we don't have a light in our scene, if we go into rendered view, it's just using the world to light this, which looks really ugly. So I'm going to show you a cool thing that I learned a while ago, and that's using the world as a light. So I'm just going to Shift A, add an input, and then I'm going to grab this RGB value, and I'm going to make this one what the object sees, which is pure white. So I'm just going to connect that. And you could stop there, but I like to make the background color different for the camera. So I'm just going to Shift D and duplicate the sky. And then I'm going to grab like a really bright kind of like orange color. And then I'm going to Shift A to add a mix shader. And I'm just going to mix these together. And I'll use an input light path. And I'm going to use isCameraArray as the mix factor. And what that does is, so the objects will see that pure white environment world, and the camera will see this cool yellow. So if I go into camera view here, you can see that now we've got this cool, perfect yellow background. So we don't need to worry about making a seamless background or anything. And I actually have something very similar to this available on my Gumroad account, so I'll link that in the description down below. Yeah, so let's save this project, render this out. One thing I always like to note is to animate your seed value so that each frame it does something different. And I rendered this out with just 100 samples in cycles. I guess you could also do this in EV2 and it should work pretty well. You don't get the transparency the way I have it set up, but I know that's definitely something you could do. Render that out, and that's pretty much it. I hope you learned a lot about animating a cube array in Blender. Don't forget, if you want to get free resources and great tutorials like this, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.